Heyo ladies, gents, and NBs, welcome to or back to the channel. My name's Sky, and today I want to talk about a certain character that's been the talk of the town in the fandom as of late. Someone who many speculate might return in the near future in a certain highly anticipated numbered title. Of course, I'm talking about Xehanort. You know him, I know him, we all love and loathe him. He is one of the series' most fascinating, complex, and interesting characters, and he's certainly one of my favorite characters in the entire series, and I know many of us thought that once KH4 ended, his story was going to be done. Sure, we got a prequel in Dark Road, which is amazing, and I will forever be a defender of that game, but I think many of us suspected that, you know what, this is probably the end of his journey. And then the finale of Dark Road dropped, along with an interview with Nomura about the finale, and well, now we aren't so sure. In fact, many of us, myself included, believe he's actually going to return. For those of you who don't know what I mean, when the Dark Road finale released, Nomura published not only an interview, which gave some insight into the Dark Road finale, as well as hinting at his possible return through one specific quote, but he also dropped this piece of artwork to celebrate the finale's release, which on the surface doesn't look anything more like a cool artwork of Xehanort. But when you look more into it, it starts to become a little bit suspicious, because it looks like Xehanort is within Quadratum. And again, you might be thinking, well, this just could be a one-off. And, you know, I think that's an easy assumption to make. But then, earlier this year, back in late March during Kingdom Hearts' 24th anniversary, Nomura dropped yet another piece of artwork with Xehanort in that same outfit, in a rainy setting, with an umbrella, and yeah, needless to say, I think most of the fandom are now firm believers that Xehanort is going to be coming back. I'm back again! And today, I want to talk about that possibility in depth, what evidence there is supporting the theory, as well as my own thoughts and theories on why I think Xehanort will return in KH4 and be an ally to Sora. So, what evidence do we have so far that supports this theory? Well, first off, we have this quote from the aforementioned interview with Nomura back when Dark Road's finale released. Lastly, will Xehanort appear in future titles? Just because the Darkseeker saga is now concluded, does not necessarily mean Xehanort will never appear again in future titles. If the opportunity arises, then that's basically it. Nomura is answer to interviews, am I right? In addition to that quote, we also got this scene from the finale with Xehanort and Ericus talking about their futures while playing a game of chess, including this little line that Xehanort says about wanting to have a 15th life. And of course, the most substantial evidence of all, these two pieces of artwork of Xehanort, who looks slightly different both in terms of clothes and in hairstyle, in a setting reminiscent of Quadratum. And you may be asking, how do these resemble Quadratum? Well, the last one doesn't really resemble Quadratum, like it's just showing him in a raining setting, just like the first piece. But the first piece does have a little detail in the background that resembles Miyashita Park, which is a location within Shibuya. And what is Quadratum based off on? And, well, needless to say, if a piece of artwork is depicting a location in real life that is one of the inspirations for Quadratum, needless to say, that's going to raise some eyebrows in the community. It certainly has for me. And, well, that's basically all the evidence we have supporting this series so far. But it is substantial enough evidence for me to become a firm believer that Xehanort is going to return in KH4. I know I'm not the only one, because the fandom collectively agrees that that's going to be the case. How though? How exactly is this man, who we saw literally die in KH3, gonna return in KH4? Now, some people already have an idea on that, and that is, well, he died in KH3, so obviously with Quadratum being an afterlife, he will appear in that. I disagree with that. And for one very simple reason. The way that Xehanort died in KH3 doesn't seem like it would cause him to go to unreality. Let me explain why. So, if you look at how Xehanort and Sora died in KH3, their animations look very, very different. For Xehanort, he simply just became sparkly and glowy, and just his body disappeared and his heart rose up to Kingdom Hearts. With Sora, he just straight up fades away. No magically sparkly effects whatsoever, is just simple fading away before he just, boom, disappeared completely. So the difference in how their deaths were animated is enough for me to believe that, yeah, that's not how Xehanort would get to Quadratum. Another thing is the context surrounding their deaths. Xehanort's death was still within the laws of nature within reality, whereas Sora's was a result of him breaking a nature taboo. So that leads me to believe that for someone to die and then go to unreality, they have to commit a nature taboo that causes them to die. And I know what you're thinking, well, we saw Strelitzia, have a similar death to Xehanort, and she's in Quadratum. To that I say, we still don't know the whole context about why Strelitzia is there. Like, there's still a whole thing, like, with that one shot from Union Cross with Strelitzia in a white coat and her following a black-robed figure who may or may not be Lushu. So that leads me to think that there's a lot more to Strelitzia's appearance in Quadratum than we know. And whatever that is, I don't think it's, like, the same thing as, like, what Xehanort has gone through. But I do think that Strelitzia's death in Union Cross and her being in Quadratum doesn't necessarily mean that Xehanort's going to be in Quadratum just by having a similar death. Because again, there's still a lot more going on with Strelitzia than what we know, and so far Xehanort doesn't really have anything weird going on with him that would support him being in Quadratum. So now you may be thinking, wait, you say you believe that Xehanort is gonna be in Kingdom Hearts 4 and in Quadratum, and yet you're now providing evidence why that actually might not be the case. Before you all come to any conclusions, I should probably say one little thing about this, and that is, I think that the Xehanort that will be in Kingdom Hearts 4, the one that's depicted in the two aforementioned artworks, is not the Xehanort that we know. In fact, I think that's a different Xehanort. And not in a parallel universe kind of way. I think that this Xehanort might actually be a 14th fragment of Xehanort's heart. Why do I think this? Well, simple. Go back to that aforementioned scene with Xehanort and Dark Road, with them talking about 14th life. Now, if we look at, like, Organization 13, the real one, to be specific, I feel like that depicts Xehanort's 13 lives. Even if it's not, like, meant to be, like, literal, I do think it's a representation of that, and I think that's what that line from Dark Road is referring to. Very loose interpretation of the line, I'm aware, but listen, we have very little to go off of for Xehanort's return. This is the best I can come up with. So, with that in mind, I think Xehanort might have wanted to create a 14th life to see the new world that he would create after, his reenactment of the Keyblade War. The one that he started so that way he could create a world that had no light or no darkness. So I think he had a plan of creating a 14th vessel for himself, with a 14th fragment of his heart, to see this new world. Now, obviously, we know that Xehanort didn't actually create that new world, but that doesn't mean that there still couldn't be a Xehanort that could explore a world that's neither of light or darkness. And obviously, Unreality fits the bill, because we know that Unreality does not have any light or darkness in it, and we know that Xehanort is aware of the other side of reality, thanks to Melody of Memory. So that leads me to believe that he probably came up with the idea of trying to see if he could send a vessel to the other side of reality. And that leads me to thinking that he wanted to send another version of himself to this other side of reality that he is aware of. one that has, neither light or darkness. Which also, I think, explains why Xehanort is holding an umbrella within a rainy scene. Because, historically, the series has always used water as a representation of darkness. And I think the imagery depicted in the two artworks represents this version of Xehanort not having light or darkness inside of him. Or, he could be like a heart of pure light. That could be another possibility, but I'm personally leaning towards him not having a heart that has no light or darkness. And I don't know. That may sound a bit far-fetched because we know hearts in reality have both light and darkness. But if anyone can pull off having a heart fragment that has no light or darkness inside of it, it's Xehanort. I have no doubt about it. So I've gone over how and why I think that Xehanort we're going to see in KH4 is not the real Xehanort, rather a replica Xehanort, I guess. I mean, could be, a heart fragment inside of a replica. I'm aware there may be holes in that idea, but listen, that's the best one I can come up with right now on the spot. But what would his role be in the narrative? Well, I think that his arc within KH4 might actually be showcasing how this version of Xehanort is different than the Xehanort that we're familiar with. Or rather, I think he's going to have a role that is opposite of that of the real Xehanort, where he is a lot more heroic and doesn't fall down the same dark roads as the real Xehanort. I think that idea is really interesting, that we could get a version of Xehanort that is not an antagonist, and a version of Xehanort that does not have a fall to darkness, or even a fall to light for that matter. Like, I'm not saying that this version of Xehanort we're going to see is entirely like one of light either. Again, I think he's not going to belong to either force. Like, I don't know, I think having a version of Xehanort within Quadratum that has a opposite kind of arc or role to the real Xehanort is just so fascinating. I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself with this. But yeah, I think it'd just be really interesting to see. And I think his relationship with Sora could showcase that really well. And that leads me to think that maybe Xehanort will become sort of a student to Sora. Not necessarily like Sora's going to teach him all about like Keyblade stuff. No, I think he's going to learn from Sora and his accomplishes. And, what Sora's done throughout the series. Because Sora and Xehanort are also parallels. With Sora being a much more open, selfless version of Xehanort. And Xehanort, being a much more selfish, self-centered, evil version of Sora, if that makes sense. Apologies if the wording's off. So, I don't know, I think that would be really interesting. And credit to Next Gen Novelist for that idea. He did a whole video on that I highly recommend watching. I also think that with Xehanort, this replica Xehanort having, for lack of a better name for him, having a heart that's neither of light or darkness, or just being in an environment that's neither of light or darkness, could influence his heart in very interesting ways. I'm just curious how that could play out. How, something like that could affect the overall story. I feel like some big repercussions could come out of a development like that. And I don't know, maybe that could be also part of the real Xehanort's plan, who's to say. That's just my idea on it anyway. And I also think that this version of Xehanort might have the Rakutsense sigil. Rakutsense? You know what I'm talking about. For the life of me, I cannot pronounce it. The Rakutsense sigil? I'm not even gonna try anymore. But you know what I'm talking about, the one that Xemnas put on all the Organization 13 members, yada yada yada. Yeah, I think the real Xehanort might have done the same for this version of Xehanort that he created. And, he might have had that for his own purpose. I don't know, that's my guess. And that also leads me to think that the reason why we haven't seen the front of this Xehanort in the artworks is because he does have an X on his shirt. Which would be another parallel between Sora and Xehanort. Also want to credit the Landy Lounge for this. He talked about this idea in one of his streams. Recommend watching if you haven't already. Yeah, I think that would be really cool to see. And as we know, this sigil is also used, within the names of the old Organization 13. The X being implemented into the real names of these people. Because of that, I do have to bring up that a common talking point in the fandom is that Xehanort, when you remove the X from his name, can either become another or no heart. Which would be very interesting if one of those was actually his real name. I personally like No Heart as his real name, which that could be really interesting to me. I like that idea myself. Yeah, there's a ton of potential for this kind of development with this version of Xehanort that I am talking about in this video. There's just, and I think it would just fit Kingdom Hearts 4 so well with what that game's gonna be centered around. And there's probably even more ideas out there in the community that I haven't even seen yet. There's probably even more ideas I haven't thought about yet that I might later down the line. Like, there's so much potential with this concept surrounding Xehanort and KH4. Like, I could go on and on about some of the other possibilities if I thought of them by now. I'm sure there's plenty of others. Now, I know the majority of this video was about this replica Xehanort, this no heart, this other version of Xehanort I've been talking about that we think will be in Arch Autumn, in Unreality, and KH4. But I do want to touch upon the real Xehanort for a little bit, because I do think he will appear in KH4, but not in a way I think most people are expecting. So, remember in Kingdom Hearts Dark Road when Xehanort and Ericus went to the underworld to talk to the dead upperclassmen? Well, that revealed to us, the audience, that people can appear in the underworld as ghosts after they died, and they can appear there regardless of what world they came from. And remember the ending of the KH4 announcement trailer, where we see Donald and Goofy in the underworld with Hades, and Goofy mentions that they are looking for someone. I think they're looking for Xehanort, because they, through some means, learned that Xehanort knew about the other side of reality. So, they want to learn more about the other side of reality. And somehow, they learned that dead people can appear in the underworld and, talk to the living. So, I don't know how they would learn about this. I do have a bit of a crackball theory that Froggy is still alive and that he has knowledge of what Lucio did in Dark Road, and that information is going to help others, but that's more of a crackpot theory than anything. I don't have any evidence supporting that. But I digress. Whatever the reason, maybe, Donald and Goofy are sent to the underworld to see if they can talk to Xehanort post Kingdom Hearts 3, to learn all they can about this other side of reality, how Xehanort knew about it, anything else the real Xehanort knows that would be important to our heroes and the plot of Kingdom Hearts 4. That makes way too much sense to me, and I don't know, not to sound like dismissive or like on my high horse or anything, but I don't know, that seems a lot more likely to me than some of the other theories I've seen floating around in the fandom, like oh, this could be this Final Fantasy character, or it could be like it could be Oron, it could be, I don't know, Genesis for all I know. Well, I mean, I don't know, I like the idea of Genesis appearing in Kingdom Hearts at some point. I mean, what better place to have him appear than in Olympus? I digress. So yeah, I think that's what I think is going on with Donald and Goofy being in the underworld. I love the idea personally. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think there's a lot more logic behind that than some of the other ideas. Yeah, I think that's the most we're going to get out of the real Xehanort, though. Again, I don't think the real Xehanort is, like, in Unreality, like I mentioned before, but I do think he will return in Kingdom Hearts 4 just in the underworld. And that's the end of the video. I think there's just so much potential with Xehanort in Kingdom Hearts 4, regardless of if it's the one that we're familiar with or if it's a different version. I think out of all the possibilities for Kingdom Hearts 4, this is definitely up there as one of the ones I'm the most interested in and the most fascinated by, among many of my other theories and ideas I believe in for Kingdom Hearts 4. Like, the idea of Xehanort returning, like, in the present may sound like a bit off-putting to some, but I think it can be done well. I trust Nomura and the writing team to do a good job with bringing back Xehanort in whatever form he may be in. Whether it's what I post in this video or maybe something else, I mean, I could be wrong for all I know. I'll be here for whatever he has cooking with Xehanort in the future. Anyway, that's my thoughts on Xehanort's return in Kingdom Hearts 4. What are your own theories and thoughts on this idea? Do you have any your own idea on how Xehanort could be brought back? Do you agree with me on the ideas? Do you have any details you'd like to add that could expand upon these theories? Do you disagree with me? What are your own theories or ideas for what Xehanort's role would be like in the future, specifically Kingdom Hearts 3? Let me know in the comments below. Also, I hope you enjoyed this time-lapse and this artwork of Furry and Xehanort inspired by the two pieces of artwork that kickstarted this whole theory. You can find the links to the full images in the description below if you want to check them out in full. Anyway, thanks so much for watching this video. Please like and share the video if you enjoyed it. Support me on Patreon and Ko-fi. Follow me on my socials, which will be linked below. Subscribe and ring the bell icon so you can see my future videos, or check out my past videos if you wanna. Please take care of yourselves, and keep on keeping on.